Hey everyone. So I'm going to try to keep it down because I'm in a library, but I've recently posted something online about the difference between me studying 20 to 30 years ago and me studying now. Currently, digital is easy to access and you can come up with NIH studies, and I can go straight to discussion after evaluating the strength of the study. But I thought it would be worth investigating, so I did a couple of print-ups. So the difference would be whether reading from paper outdoes reading from digital. And this is the first print-up, and it essentially compared older folks doing better with digital versus digital natives, younger people, and there was improvement, like in this one, with regards to seeing text size. So if you have macular degeneration, it might be easier to go digital because you can adjust the size of your text. So this one in particular said there's no big difference between digital and paper as far as comprehension and story recall. Same thing with this. They used the language of Arabic to neutralize, and then they also neutralized all variables as far as luminescence, text size, text to paper equals, and they said no difference. Pretty good study. As far as this study I pointed out before, there was an important mention of cognitive mapping. So when you read in paper, you can you'll be able to follow the storyline or the plot line, which I'll get to later on, especially when you have more than an hour of reading. One bias, though, was that they told everybody, the digital and the paper folks, that they would be asked questions afterwards. So it might have biased the study, because if you're told you're going to be asked questions, you might be concentrating harder. So just have to mention that. The two final papers, this was a thick one, but it involved a Kindle versus the paper or text. And the biggest thing I found important with this one was that it had visual anchors. Anchors meaning that in the as you read through the paper, you could physically go back and recall in the storyline or in the plot line where the where you can relate to on the paper exactly, or in the book, the specific area you wanted to go back and reference. So that makes it easier to spatially recall or comprehend what you read. When you read on digital, there's lack of any fixed cues, so it makes it a little bit harder. I don't think that they were biased. I think it was a good study. They also included something called a plot recognition test. So you would go back and then try to reference on digital versus paper after you've been given a quiz. So again, I don't know, I couldn't see if they were told that the subjects were told that they would be asked questions afterward, but pretty good as far as pointing out that when you have paper, you can go back and to the plot, to this specific area on the paper where the table or the storyline might have changed, and it gives you more reference points. This one also talked about less distraction when you're reading paper versus, and again, mention of the cognitive mapping that's important when you have paper versus digital. So I think digital is important because it you can access information quickly, but when you have to read past an hour or you're trying to follow an author's story, I think it's more important to consider paper. So that's my 2 cents on it. The studies were a little limited as far as review of previous data, and there was one that had a few small control groups, but it was about, I think that one study was with a group of 85 sophomores, and then another study was a larger control group, but the range of age was between 50 and 80. So you'll have some variabilities there, especially when you, I mentioned earlier that some of these would take into account that if you're older, you might have more difficulty with cognitive mapping. So if you have a population that you're studying that is older, they would probably prefer text. They would probably prefer digital because you can manipulate the size of the text, make it easier for them to read, thus the cognitive mapping might be easier for them. So all in all, I think it's important to read, obviously, but as far as length of time, if you're going to be diving into a big plot, then I think paper is important. If you're going to be just looking up access information quickly, I think digital is important. If you're having issues with sleep, I think paper is important because even if you enhance or get rid of the blue, it's still irritating. The picture I'm going to put, I'll put a link to it, is me reading at night with a headlamp and paper, and looks kind of goofy, but I don't want this to interfere with my melatonin secretion. So it is important when you look at a blue screen, you will have issues with the pineal gland recognizing that there's light, and it'll fool the brain into thinking it's daytime instead of nighttime, so it might interfere with sleep. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of idea of what to do if you choose to read, or if you're having problems with sleep, consider at least paper. If you're trying to get massive amounts of data, then digital. But either way, I think it's important that you read. So hopefully this gives you a little. Don't forget to subscribe to me down below, and then hit the like button and share this in case it helped.